The price of arrogance. The Galactic Federation's research vessel, Celestial Seeker, hung in Earth's orbit, like a crystalline dewdrop catching the first rays of dawn. High Commander Zaxval stood at the observation deck, his 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the blue planet below. His silvery scales rippled with barely concealed disdain as he reviewed the preliminary reports from his science team. Another primitive species, he muttered, mandibles clicking in irritation. Barely achieved spaceflight, still burning fossil fuels, and fighting among themselves. He turned to his chief cynoanthropologist, Dr. Yenra, whose translucent form shifted nervously. With respect, High Commander, Dr. Yenra's melodious voice carried a note of concern. The humans display remarkable adaptability and technological progress. Their advancement from basic tools to space exploration occurred in an incredibly short evolutionary timeframe. Zaxval dismissed the warning with a wave of his upper appendage. They're divided into nearly 200 political entities. They can barely cooperate enough to maintain a primitive orbital station. The Council has authorized resource extraction in their system, and that's what we'll do. The Federation had done this countless times before. Identify resource-rich systems with pre-spacefaring civilizations, extract what they needed, and leave before the natives could comprehend what had happened. It was standard procedure, backed by millennia of successful operations. But Earth would be different. The extraction ships arrived 3 solar cycles later, massive vessels that dwarf the Celestial Seeker. They positioned themselves over Earth's largest deposits of rare minerals, their mining beams preparing to penetrate the planet's crust. The Federation's algorithms had calculated optimal extraction points for maximum efficiency, paying little attention to the human settlements nearby. Dr. Yenra studied the projected impact zones with growing alarm. High Commander, these extraction sites are dangerously close to major population centers. The tectonic disruption could be explained away as natural disasters, Zaxval interrupted. These primitives still attribute much to their deities and natural phenomena. Begin the extraction. The first mining beam struck near the coast of what humans call Japan. The Federation's calculations had been perfect in terms of mineral extraction, and catastrophically wrong about everything else. The beam's energy signature triggered every military sensor in the region. Within hours, human governments worldwide were sharing data, analyzing the threats, and preparing responses. The Federation didn't notice. Their sensors, calibrated to detect advanced energy weapons and shield systems, completely missed the primitive but effective nuclear missiles being readied in silos across the planet. They dismissed the increased radio chatter as panic among the natives. The second beam struck near Sao Paulo. The resulting earthquakes and tsunamis devastated coastal regions across South America. Millions died. The Federation logged it as an acceptable level of collateral damage. They didn't expect the response. They couldn't have imagined it. The first sign that something was wrong came when their shields registered multiple high-energy impacts. Primitive nuclear weapons, launched simultaneously from dozens of locations, detonated against the extraction ship's barriers. While the shields held, the radiation interfered with their sensitive equipment. Impossible, Zaxval hissed, watching the humans' desperate but coordinated attack. They shouldn't be capable of this level of cooperation. Their own data shows they've never achieved global unity. Dr. Yenra's form pulsed with agitation. That's what we missed, Commander. They fight among themselves constantly, yes, but they unite against external threats. Every conflict in their history shows this pattern. But it was too late for such insights. The Federation's shields, designed to withstand energy weapons, proved surprisingly vulnerable to the brute force of kinetic weapons. Railguns, hastily modified from orbital defense platforms, began launching tungsten rods at relativistic speeds. The first extraction shields flickered and failed. Zaxval watched in horror as humans, supposedly primitive and disorganized, demonstrated devastating tactical innovation. They weren't using elegant energy weapons or sophisticated shield penetrators. They were simply hurling heavy objects really, really fast. And it was working. "Cease extraction," he ordered, but the damage was done. The humans had tasted blood, and more importantly, they had seen their weapons work against superior technology. The Federation's aura of invincibility was shattered. As the extraction ships retreated, leaving one of their number a burning wreck in Earth's atmosphere, Dr. Yenrei approached the commander. "They will not forget this," she said softly. "We should have listened to the warning signs. Their entire entertainment culture is filled with stories of humanity fighting against superior forces and winning." Zaxval's scales had lost their luster, now a dull gray of defeat. The council must be informed. These humans, they're different. They don't fight like civilized species. They don't respect superior technology. They just adapt, improvise. And now they know they're not alone in the universe, Dr. Yenrei added. They know there are hostile forces out there. They know their weapons can hurt us. What do you think they'll do with that knowledge? The answer came sooner than anyone in the Federation expected. Within days, human nations that had been bitter enemies for centuries signed unprecedented cooperation treaties. Military technology was shared, industries reorganized. They weren't just preparing to defend themselves, they were preparing to take the fight to the stars. The Federation had made a terrible mistake. They had followed their protocols perfectly, but those protocols had never accounted for a species like humanity. They had assumed technological superiority meant victory. They had dismissed humans as primitive because they lacked energy weapons and shield technology. But they had failed to understand a crucial truth. Humans had spent their entire history fighting against superior forces, whether it was nature itself, larger predators, or better-equipped enemies. Humans had always found ways to prevail. They didn't need elegant technology. They just needed to know something could be killed. As the Celestial Seeker prepared to jump to hyperspace, Zaxval received one final transmission from Earth. It was broadcasting on all frequencies, in every major human language, and the message was simple. "We know you're out there now. We know you can be hurt. We're coming." The price of arrogance had been paid. The real cost was yet to come. Silent thunder. The wreckage of the Federation extraction ship lay scattered across the Australian outback, a graveyard of alien technology that would change the course of human history. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the impact zone, her eyes scanning the twisted alien alloys that had once been part of a spacecraft capable of crossing galaxies. She'd been a theoretical physicist before the invasion. Now, like thousands of other scientists worldwide, she was part of humanity's crash course in advanced technology. Found another intact memory core, called out Dr. James Rodriguez, her colleague from what had once been a rival research institution. The old boundaries between nations, institutions, and corporations had evaporated in the face of the existential threat. Chinese quantum computers worked alongside American AI systems, processing alien data. Russian aerospace engineers collaborated with Japanese robotics experts, reverse engineering alien technology. Sarah walked carefully through the debris field to where James was already connecting interface cables to the alien device. They'd learned early on that Federation technology responded to specific electromagnetic frequencies, a discovery that had cost several good scientists their lives in the early days. "Their arrogance is our advantage," Sarah muttered, a phrase that had become something of a mantra among the research teams. The Federation's technology was elegant, advanced, and completely unhardened against primitive electromagnetic interference. They'd never needed to protect against such crude attacks before. In orbit, the International Defense Fleet was taking shape. What had once been a handful of space stations had transformed into a bustling shipyard. The first human warships looked nothing like their Federation counterparts. Where alien vessels were sleek and crystalline, human ships were brutal, practical things. They combined reverse-engineered Federation tech with humanity's own innovations, and some decidedly primitive but effective solutions. Admiral Helena Santos watched from the command deck of the IDF Armstrong as another vessel took shape. The ships weren't beautiful, but they were tough. Layers of ablative armor protected vital systems. Electromagnetic shielding, originally designed to protect against solar flares, now served as a defense against Federation energy weapons. And the weapons, those were something special. Status report on Project Thunder, she asked her tactical officer. The mass draggers are exceeding expectations. Admiral, we've successfully integrated Federation power systems with our railgun technology. The latest tests show we can accelerate projectiles to 0.1 c. At that speed, even their shields can't fully compensate for the kinetic energy. Helena nodded. The Federation had never developed similar weapons because they'd considered them inelegant, wasteful. Their entire combat doctrine was built around energy weapons and shields. They weren't prepared for ships that would throw mountains at them at relativistic speeds. But humanity's preparations went beyond mere weapons development. In underground facilities across the globe, a new generation of soldiers trained to fight an interstellar war. They learned to think in 3 dimensions, to fight in zero gravity, to operate hybrid human-alien technology that felt wrong to both species. Captain Marcus Chen led his squad through another zero combat simulation. His troops moved with practiced precision, using maneuvering thrusters that combined Federation anti-gravity tech with good old-fashioned reaction mass. Their weapons looked like they'd been cobbled together from alien ray guns and human assault rifles. Because they had been. Remember, he called out to his team, they expect us to fight like them. That's the last thing we're going to do. The Federation's first warning that something was wrong came when their long-range sensors detected unusual activity in Earth's solar system. The humans weren't just defending their planet. They were expanding. Asteroid mining operations stripped entire space rocks for materials. Ships that shouldn't have been possible were taking shape in orbit. In the Federation Council, Dr. Yenrei presented her latest report with barely concealed anxiety. They're advancing faster than any species we've ever encountered. They're not just copying our technology. They're combining it with their own in ways we never considered. They're making it better. High Commander Zaxval, now tasked with preparing defenses against a potential human counterattack, studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. The humans had taken Federation technology and done something unprecedented. They'd made it worse. More primitive, more brutal, more effective. How? Demanded one council member. How can they advance so quickly? Because they don't know it should be impossible, Dr. Yenrei explained. They don't have our preconceptions about how technology should develop. They don't care about elegant solutions. They find what works, no matter how crude it might seem. In her lab back on Earth, Sarah Chen made another breakthrough. The Federation's quantum communication systems were incredibly sophisticated and incredibly vulnerable to simple jamming techniques. They never had to defend against electronic warfare, she explained to her team. They went straight to quantum entanglement. They forgot the basics. Humanity hadn't forgotten. Every dirty trick, every crude but effective solution, every primitive technology that had been developed over centuries of warfare was being combined with stolen Federation tech. The result was something entirely new and terrifying to their enemies. Admiral Santos stood on her bridge, watching as the first full battle fleet completed its shakedown trials. The ships were ugly, brutal things, more akin to flying fortresses than the graceful Federation vessels. They carried enough kinetic weapons to shatter moons, point defense systems that could track quantum-shifted targets, and armor that could absorb hits from energy weapons through sheer mass. Send the message, she ordered. Across every frequency the Federation could detect, in every language humanity had decoded from their databases, the same words were transmitted. You thought we were primitive. You thought we were divided. You thought we would break. Instead, we learned. We adapted. We united. And now we're coming to show you just how primitive we can be. The silent thunder was about to break. The Federation was about to learn why humanity's primitive nature was its greatest strength. The art of innovation. The Federation battlecruiser Eternal Harmony detected the human fleet too late. By their standards, the Earth ships shouldn't have been able to approach undetected. Their engines were loud, wasteful, and primitive. But that was exactly why they hadn't been spotted. The Federation's sensors were calibrated to detect efficient, sophisticated drive signatures. They completely missed the crude nuclear pulse drives that humanity had modified with stolen stealth technology. Fleet Commander Ixel watched in horror as the human vessels emerged from the cover of a debris field, their massive forms blotting out the stars. They weren't even trying to be elegant. Each ship was essentially a mobile fortress, bristling with weapon systems that ranged from reverse-engineered Federation energy cannons to what appeared to be simple mass drivers scaled up to astronomical proportions. Evasive maneuvers. Ixel ordered, but the humans had already launched their first strike. The space around the Federation fleet erupted with electromagnetic interference, crude but effective jamming that disrupted their quantum communications. Federation ships, suddenly unable to coordinate their sophisticated defense networks, began to break formation. The humans had learned from that first battle over Earth. Federation shields were incredibly effective against energy weapons and could deflect most conventional projectiles. But they had limits that humanity had spent 2 years figuring out how to exploit. The first wave of attacks wasn't even weapons fire. The human ships simply released clouds of metallic chaff. Countless tiny fragments of radar-reflective material. Federation sensors, trying to track thousands of potential threats simultaneously, began to overload. Their targeting systems, designed to track elegant energy signatures, struggled to cope with the sheer volume of crude debris. Barbaric. Ixel muttered, watching his fleet's sophisticated defense systems being defeated by what amounted to throwing sand in their eyes. But there was a brutal effectiveness to it that he couldn't deny. On the bridge of the IDF Thermopylae, Admiral Helena Santos watched the Federation fleet's formation crumble. "Now," she ordered, "show them what primitive really means." The human fleet opened fire. But instead of the expected barrage of energy weapons or simple kinetic strikes, they deployed something the Federation had never seen before. Hybrid weapons that combined stolen alien technology with human innovation in ways that should never have worked, but did. Quantum-entangled warheads phased through Federation shields, their crude explosive payloads detonating directly against hull armor. Railguns fired projectiles sheathed in stolen Federation shield technology, creating kinetic impacts that bypassed defensive barriers entirely. Electronic warfare suites, combining Earth's centuries of experience in communications warfare with alien quantum tech, wreaked havoc with Federation targeting systems. Dr. Sarah Chen, now serving as the Thermopylae's chief science officer, monitored the effectiveness of their hybrid weapons. "They still haven't adapted," she reported. "Their combat doctrine is too rigid. They keep trying to fight this like a proper space battle." That was humanity's greatest advantage. The Federation had rules of engagement, proper procedures, elegant solutions refined over millennia of warfare. Humanity had desperation, creativity, and a willingness to try anything that might work. The battle spread across the star system as Federation ships tried to retreat to a safe distance for coordinated counterattacks. But the humans had anticipated this too. Their ships, despite their primitive appearance, were faster in real space than their Federation counterparts. They hadn't bothered trying to replicate the aliens' efficient drive systems. They'd just bolted stolen Federation power plants onto enormous engines that worked by throwing nuclear explosions out the back. Captain Marcus Chen led the first boarding action, his troops moving through the vacuum in hybrid suits that combined Federation environmental systems with good old-fashioned Kevlar and steel plate. Their weapons were just as mixed. Reverse-engineered plasma rifles jury-rigged with traditional gun sights and physical triggers, because human soldiers found them more intuitive than the alien mental interfaces. "Remember your training," he told his squad as they breached the hull of a Federation cruiser. They expect elegance. Give them chaos instead. The Federation crew wasn't prepared for close-quarters combat. Their internal security systems were designed to deal with sophisticated infiltration attempts, not armored humans with breaching charges and shotguns. They had no protocols for dealing with enemies who would deliberately decompress entire sections of the ship just to clear a path to their objectives. Back in the main battle, the Federation fleet was learning harsh lessons about human innovation. Their ships, designed for long-range energy weapon duels, found themselves swamped by Earth vessels that closed to point-blank range. Federation commanders, trained to fight with surgical precision, were being overwhelmed by enemies who treated space warfare like a bar brawl. This isn't how it's supposed to work. Ixel protested as another of his ships succumbed to the human assault. Their technology is inferior. Their methods are crude. Their tactics are effective. His tactical officer finished grimly. They're winning because we don't know how to fight this kind of battle. The humans had turned their own limitations into advantages. Their ship's thick armor, originally designed to compensate for their inability to replicate Federation shield technology, proved better at absorbing damage than the elegant energy barriers. Their hybrid weapons, built because they couldn't fully understand alien technology, were impossible for Federation defenses to predict and counter. As the battle reached its climax, Admiral Santos ordered her fleet to execute their final innovation. Federation sensors detected a massive energy buildup in the human vessels, similar to their own ships preparing for a faster-than-light jump. The alien commanders relaxed slightly, assuming the primitives were about to retreat. Instead, the human ships channeled that energy through their crude mass drivers. The result was devastating. Relativistic kinetic kills that struck with the force of small nuclear weapons, their impacts enhanced by stolen Federation technology that the humans had repurposed in ways that would have horrified their original designers. The art of innovation had proven superior to millennia of refined technology. As the surviving Federation ships fled the battlefield, humanity had proven something vital. Sometimes the most elegant solution was a really big hammer. Breaking points. The Federation Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 100 species argued as reports of another human victory flashed across their neural displays. The humans weren't just winning battles now. They were pushing into Federation space, liberating worlds that had long chafed under the Federation's guidance. They must be stopped, thundered Representative Kithel, his crystalline form pulsing with anger. These primitives threaten everything we've built over millennia. But not everyone agreed. Dr. Yenra, now speaking for a growing minority of Federation species, stood her ground. Perhaps that's exactly what we need. Our civilization has stagnated. We've become so convinced of our superiority that we've forgotten how to adapt. The debate was interrupted by new tactical data. Human ships had been detected approaching one of the Federation's primary manufacturing worlds. But something was different this time. The humans weren't just attacking. They were broadcasting a message to the planet's population. To all sentient beings under Federation control, we bring you a choice. Not an ultimatum, not a demand for surrender, but a genuine choice. Join us in building something new, or stand with those who would keep you bound by tradition and arrogance. In the council chamber, the message caused an uproar. But on the manufacturing world below, something unprecedented happened. The worker species, long considered too primitive for full Federation membership, began to rebel. They'd seen how humans treated their allies, as equals, not servants. Admiral Helena Santos watched from the bridge of the Thermopylae as the first ships from the rebel faction approached her fleet. They were Federation vessels, but their crews had painted over the elegant markings with crude symbols of rebellion. It was exactly the kind of primitive display that the Federation leadership despised, and exactly why the humans were winning hearts as well as battles. They're requesting permission to join our fleet, her communications officer reported, sounding somewhat surprised. Helena smiled. Granted, and get them linked into our tactical networks. Let's show them how primitives fight. The Federation's response was swift and brutal. Ships loyal to the Council descended on the rebel world, intent on making an example of those who would side with humans. But they found themselves facing not just human vessels, but their own ships turned against them, now fighting with the same brutal efficiency that had proven so effective. Dr. Sarah Chen, working with engineers from the rebel faction, made another breakthrough. Their entire command and control structure is based on the assumption that all participants will follow proper protocols. She explained to Admiral Santos, "They have no defense against ships that simply ignore the rules of engagement." The battle that followed would be remembered as the turning point. Federation ships, trying to maintain their elegant battle formations, found themselves caught between human vessels and rebel ships that had abandoned all pretense of fighting properly. The rebels, freed from millennia of doctrine, proved just as capable of innovation as their human allies. Captain Marcus Chen, leading a mixed human-alien boarding team, couldn't help but laugh as his rebel allies took to human tactics with enthusiasm. The Federation security forces weren't prepared for former worker species who had spent centuries maintaining the very ships they were now helping to capture. "They think too much like machines," one of his alien teammates observed, using a stolen maintenance override to bypass security systems that had been designed to be far too sophisticated to hack so simply. They forget that sometimes the crude solution is the best solution. Back in the council chamber, the divisions were becoming impossible to ignore. More species were beginning to question the Federation's fundamental assumptions. Why were some species considered too primitive for full membership? Why was elegant technology valued over effective technology? Why had they stopped innovating? "Look at what they've accomplished in just a few years," Dr. Yenrei argued. "While we spent centuries perfecting our existing technology, they took our basic principles and found new applications we never imagined. They're not just copying us, they're improving upon our work." The Federation was facing a crisis of identity. Their certainty in their own superiority had been their greatest strength, but now it was becoming their greatest weakness. Species that had been content with their place in the hierarchy were beginning to ask dangerous questions. A young Federation officer, watching human ships fight alongside rebel vessels, sent a private message to his superiors that would later be seen as prophetic. "They're not winning because they're stronger or more advanced. They're winning because they've shown us that our way isn't the only way. And once you see that, you can't unsee it." The breaking points were revealing themselves. The Federation's rigid hierarchy, its devotion to tradition, its dismissal of primitive approaches, all of these were becoming liabilities. Humanity hadn't just brought superior firepower to the war. They'd brought something far more dangerous: ideas. As more Federation worlds and ships declared their independence, the Council was forced to face an uncomfortable truth. They hadn't just underestimated humanity's military capabilities, they'd underestimated their ability to inspire change. The humans weren't just defeating the Federation's forces, they were defeating its ideology. Admiral Santos, watching another Federation battle group surrender without firing a shot, understood what was happening. "We didn't have to destroy them," she told her crew. "We just had to show them a better way." The Federation was reaching its breaking point, but from those breaks, something new was beginning to emerge. Something that combined the best of both civilizations, the Federation's knowledge and humanity's drive to innovate. The galaxy would never be the same. Evolution's children. The Federation capital world of Luminara gleamed like a jewel in space, its crystalline spires reaching toward the stars. But today, those spires were witnessing something unprecedented. Ships from across the galaxy, both Federation and human, gathering for what would either be the end of a war or the beginning of something entirely new. High Commander Zaxval, now one of the few remaining hardliners in the Federation leadership, watched the arrival of the human diplomatic vessel with a mixture of dread and fascination. The ship was exactly what he'd expect from humans, a practical design that somehow incorporated both Federation technology and what appeared to be rotating habitat sections straight out of their primitive science fiction. They didn't even try to make it look elegant, he muttered to Dr. Yenra, who stood beside him as an advisor to the peace delegation. "That's rather the point, isn't it?" she replied. "They never tried to be what we wanted them to be. That's why they won." The human delegation was led by Admiral Helena Santos, now bearing the title of Earth's ambassador to the galaxy. She was accompanied by Dr. Sarah Chen, whose understanding of both human and Federation technology had become legendary, and Captain Marcus Chen, representing the new joint military forces that had emerged during the war. The Grand Council Chamber, once a place of rigid hierarchy, where species were seated according to their technological advancement, had been reorganized. Today, representatives sat in a circle, symbolizing the new equality that humanity's revolution had forced the Federation to accept. "We are here," Helena began, her voice carrying across the chamber, "not to demand surrender, nor to impose our will. We are here to propose a new way forward, one that recognizes that progress doesn't always follow a straight line." The chamber erupted in discussion as Helena laid out humanity's proposal. The Federation wouldn't be disbanded. Its accumulated knowledge and technology were too valuable to discard. Instead, it would be transformed. The artificial barriers between advanced and primitive species would be eliminated. Innovation would be valued alongside refinement. "Look at what we've accomplished together," Sarah Chen added, gesturing to a holographic display showing the hybrid technologies that had emerged during the war. Federation precision combined with human creativity. Your knowledge of the fundamentals merged with our willingness to experiment. We're better together than apart. The display showed ships that combined Federation elegance with human practicality, medical techniques that merged advanced alien biotechnology with Earth's centuries of brutal but effective surgical experience, and communication systems that used quantum entanglement alongside old-fashioned radio, because sometimes the primitive solution was the best backup plan. Captain Chen spoke next, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought alongside both humans and Federation species. "We've learned from each other. Your species taught us the elegance of advanced technology. We showed you that sometimes the crude solution is the most effective. Both approaches have value." The changes were already happening. Federation worlds that had once looked down on primitive solutions were now eagerly studying human history, learning from Earth's countless wars and innovations. Human scientists were working alongside alien researchers, combining their different approaches to solve problems that had stumped both civilizations. "But there's something more important than technology at stake here," Helena continued. "What we're really talking about is evolution. Not just of our species or our technology, but of our ideas." Dr. Yenra stepped forward, her form glowing with emotion. "We thought evolution was a straight line from primitive to advanced. The humans showed us it's more like a tree, with countless branches of possibility. Their primitive solutions evolved alongside our elegant ones, and both have their place." The Federation hardliners fought against the changes, of course. They argued that accepting primitive approaches would set their civilization back centuries. But they couldn't deny the results. Worlds that had adopted human innovations alongside Federation technology were advancing faster than ever before. Species that had been dismissed as primitive were proving their worth in unexpected ways. "We're all evolution's children," Helena concluded. "Every species in this chamber evolved to solve problems in their own way. The Federation's mistake wasn't in advancing technology. It was in assuming there was only one right way to advance. The vote that followed wasn't even close. The Federation would be reformed, transformed into something new. The hierarchy of species would be abolished. Technology would be judged by its effectiveness, not its elegance. Innovation would be encouraged, even if it meant sometimes taking steps that seemed primitive." As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Zaxvalve approached Helena. "I still don't fully understand," he admitted. "How did you do it? How did a primitive species manage to change the galaxy so fundamentally?" Helena smiled. "Because we never accepted that we were primitive. We looked at your advanced technology and didn't see something to worship. We saw something to improve. That's humanity's greatest strength. We're never satisfied with good enough. The changes rippled across the galaxy. Federation worlds began incorporating human innovations, while Earth eagerly adapted the more refined alien technologies. The distinction between primitive and advanced began to blur as species learned from each other, combining approaches in ways that would have been unthinkable before. On a small trading station near what had once been the Federation border, a human engineer worked alongside a former Federation technician, combining Earth's crude but effective water purification techniques with advanced alien filtration technology. The result was something new, not quite Federation, not quite human, but better than either. Evolution's children, the engineer mused, watching their hybrid system come online. That's what we all are. Always adapting, always changing, always finding new ways to solve old problems. The galaxy would never be the same, but perhaps that had been the point all along. Evolution wasn't about becoming more advanced, it was about becoming more adaptable. Humanity hadn't just forced the Federation to accept primitive solutions. They'd reminded the galaxy that true advancement meant never stopping, never settling, never assuming you had all the answers. The stars stretched out before them, filled with endless possibilities. And somewhere out there, evolution's children, human and alien alike, were facing those possibilities together, ready to find new solutions, whether elegant or crude, advanced or primitive, or something entirely new that no one had imagined yet.